In 2018, the prices of a washing machine in the United States suddenly went up. But this had nothing to do with increase in quality or cost of production. Rather, this was the result of a decision made in Washington, something called tariffs. The explanation sounded simple. Tariffs would punish foreign countries, protect American workers, bring jobs back. But almost immediately, something wasn't adding up. The companies paying the tariffs weren't foreign governments, they were American businesses. And the people absorbing the cost weren't politicians, they were consumers, farmers, and workers who never voted on trade policy at all. Then the pattern spread. Tariffs weren't just raising prices, they were now reshaping where factories were built, which regions lost export markets, which voters felt economic pain first, and which governments changed behaviors under pressure. What started as trade policy began doing something else entirely. It was becoming a political tool. Fast forward to 2026 and the US president was threatening a repeat of that fiasco, threatening to impose tariffs on countries that refused to support his claim to a sovereign nation's territory.
May put a tariff on countries if they don't go along with Greenland, because we need Greenland for national security.
At the time of recording this, we saw that he had reversed course at this point. So, what a man. So, how did we get here? I want to tell you the story of how this boring economic policy stopped being just a tax on imports and became one of the most powerful political weapons in the global economy. Now, picture a container ship arriving at the port of Los Angeles. On board are washing machines manufactured in South Korea. Before a single one reaches a store shelf, a tax must be paid to the US government. But who pays it? Politicians will have you believe it's foreign countries, foreign manufacturers, but that isn't how tariffs work. In reality, the tax is paid by the company bringing goods into the country. They write the check to Customs and Border Protection. The foreign government does not pay. The foreign manufacturer does not pay directly. That part isn't debatable. This is how the system is designed. But paying the tariff is only just the beginning. Once the importer absorbs that cost, they face a choice. They either eat the loss or raise prices. Well, after the 2018 trade war between the US and China, economists studied what happened. The results were striking. Study after study found the cost passed through almost entirely to US prices. There was little evidence Chinese exporters lowered prices to offset the duties. In some sectors, prices didn't just rise by the tariff amount, they rose by more, a phenomenon economists call overshifting, where firms increase prices beyond the direct cost increase. So here's the puzzle at the heart of modern trade wars. If tariffs are legally paid by domestic companies and empirical evidence shows the cost falls on domestic consumers, why does every politician insist tariffs punish foreign countries? Well, that question is where the story really begins. January 22nd, 2018. Donald Trump approved steep tariffs on imported washing machines, rates ranging from 20 to 50%.
I am taking action to impose safeguard tariffs on imported residential washing machines and all solar products.
The goal was to protect Whirlpool, the largest US-based appliance producer, and push Samsung and LG to build factories inside America. This is tariff as industrial policy. That is, using trade barriers to reshape where things get made. Within months, the effects showed up in prices. Economists found the average washing machine rose by about $86, roughly 12% over typical pre-tariff prices. But the most revealing detail came from a product that wasn't even taxed: clothes dryers. They faced zero tariffs, none. Yet their prices rose too by about $92 because washers and dryers are sold as matched sets. Both increased during the disruption. The tariffs did create manufacturing jobs. Samsung opened a factory in South Carolina. LG built one in Tennessee. Whirlpool expanded in Ohio. Studies estimate roughly 1,800 new positions, but The cost was enormous. Higher prices cost American consumers approximately $1.5 billion in a single year. The Treasury collected only about $80 million in tariff revenue. The remaining more than $1.4 billion came directly from households paying more at checkout. That works out to roughly $800,000 per job per year. For comparison, the average manufacturing worker earns around $45,000 annually. So, in purely economic terms, the price increase imposed by these tariffs cost many times more than the wages of the jobs they created. And the biggest beneficiary wasn't labor. Research showed domestic producers raised prices on US-made machines as well. This is the first transformation. Tariffs sold as job creation become wealth transfer, money flowing from millions of dispersed consumers to a small number of protected firms. The winners can identify the policy that helped them, but the losers, they rarely realize they are paying for this. The washing machine tariffs were a warning shot. What followed reshaped global trade. On March 23, 2018, the administration imposed sweeping tariffs, 25% on steel, 10% on aluminium, invoking national security.
Today, I'm defending America's national security by placing tariffs on foreign imports of steel and aluminum. We will have a 25% tariff on foreign steel and a 10% tariff on foreign aluminum when the product comes across our borders.
This hits not just China now, but close allies like Canada, the European Union, and even South Korea. China responded within weeks, and it didn't respond at random. Chinese retaliation targeted a narrow set of US exports, products economically important, geographically concentrated, and politically visible. Bourbon, cranberries, soybeans, industries tied to farm states and rural communities that played an outsized role in recent elections. Studies found that US counties with stronger Republican support and counties that swung more heavily toward Trump in 2016 were more likely to be hit by Chinese retaliatory tariffs. The targeting was now political. No group felt the impact more than soybean farmers. Before the trade war, China purchased roughly a third of all US soybean exports. When Beijing imposed a 25% retaliatory tariff, US soybeans became uncompetitive overnight. Exports to China collapsed by more than half within months. Farm income plunged. Over the next 2 years, farmers received tens of billions in emergency government aid. But the longer-term damage was harder to reverse. Brazilian producers expanded to fill the gap, investing in ports and long-term contracts with Chinese buyers. When tensions eased, many of those relationships remained. This is the second transformation. Tariff as retaliation became precision-guided instruments, not aimed at economies, but at electorates. The objective shifts from market access to political pressure.
Tariffs of 25% on steel and 10% on aluminium have caused international outrage.
By 2019, tariffs had moved beyond economics. In May of that year, Trump erupted over migration at the southern border. His response had nothing to do with immigration law. Instead, he turned to trade. The White House began to pressure Mexico. They instructed Mexico to take unprecedented steps to stop Central American migrants or face tariffs on all Mexican exports, starting at 5% and escalating to 25%. For Mexico, the threat was enormous. Roughly 80% of its exports go to the United States. A blanket 25% tariff would have delivered a severe economic shock. Within days, Mexico complied. The government deployed thousands of National Guard troops to its southern border. Enforcement increased. Mexico agreed to expand cooperation with US asylum policies. A trade weapon designed for commerce had now extracted sweeping concessions on migration policy from a sovereign nation. The precedent was clear. Tariffs could compel cooperation on issues far outside trade. Countries dependent on US market access now understood the risk. Trade exposure had become political vulnerability. Market access could now be conditioned not just on prices or rules, but on alignment with Washington's priorities: migration enforcement, energy policy, security cooperation, even diplomatic posture. Scholars began using new language to describe what is happening. Some called it economic coercion, weaponized interdependence. When tariffs, sanctions, and market access fuse together, trade policies stop being economic management. It becomes coercive statecraft. This is now the third transformation. Tariffs as geopolitics become instruments of pressure aimed not at markets but at sovereignty itself. But what happens to the people at the receiving end of all of this? During the trade war, producers across rural America watched years of work unravel. Farmers described losses running into hundreds of thousands of dollars in a single season. This was large enough to threaten multi-generational operations. Morale across farming communities hit historic lows. But farmers were only part of the bill. Tariffs fall hardest on people with the least room to absorb them. Economic studies show lower income households pay a far larger share of their income toward tariff-driven price increases, several times more than wealthy households relative to earnings. Poorer families spend most of their income on physical goods that are imported and taxed at the border. Wealthier households spend more on services and assets that carry no tariffs. Even manufacturing workers face a cruel irony. Steel tariffs revive domestic production, adding several thousand jobs, but higher steel costs rippled outward. Automobiles, construction, appliances, machinery. Industries using steel faced billions in added input costs. Estimates suggest downstream manufacturers shared tens of thousands of jobs, more than offsetting gains in steel itself. The economy lost jobs. The implied cost of protecting each steel position ran into hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, paid by consumers and workers elsewhere in the supply chain. This is the core mechanism. Tariffs concentrate visible benefits among a small protected group, while dispersing far larger costs across millions who never connect rising prices or lost jobs to trade policies. The winners organize, they lobby, they show up. Meanwhile, the losers usually don't even know who took their money away. The World Trade Organization was built to prevent exactly this. For decades, the multilateral trading system imposed rules on power. Countries accepted binding commitments. Disputes were resolved by neutral panels. The process was slow and imperfect, but it constrained unilateral action and helped prevent the escalation spirals that had devastated the global economy in the 1930s. Well, that system is now badly broken. Since 2019, the WTO's appellate body, the institution that issues binding final rulings, has been effectively paralyzed. The United States blocked the appointment of new judges, leaving the body without enough members to function. Today, countries found in violation of trade rules can simply appeal into the void, indefinitely delaying compliance. The guardrails are now gone. What followed was predictable. Tariffs escalated, retaliation hardened, trade disputes that once would have been adjudicated turned into standoffs, resolved not by law but by leverage. The response from the rest of the world has not been surrender but adaptation. Countries have sought to reduce dependence on any single market. Regional trade agreements have deepened. Major emerging economies, including members of BRICS, have explored alternatives to dollar-centric trade with uneven success. And China has moved aggressively to present itself as a champion of predictable trade, even as it continues to pursue its own strategic interest. The question before us now is, if the world powers continue to take unilateral actions, punishing sovereign governments for refusing to support their foreign policies, how long do we have before the global order we've come to know crumbles?